All right, my colleague Dharamjot Kaur has, of course, been very patiently waiting with us, and she's, of course, joining us with more information, because remember, this is what the scene looks like in some areas along the line of control at this moment. The security is, of course, at its level where it is meant to be. And Dharamjot, give us a sense of what is happening at this moment with respect to the drones that are being spotted and with the blackouts that we see in some areas.
Well, Saleh, things have calmed down for the moment. Whatever we heard before in the last couple of hours, those were momentary updates with respect to all drone sightings and any potential explosions that we heard. However, things have relatively calmed down. The armed forces are still telling all citizens and all civic administrations to ensure that the public of India only has official real-time information and that they do not panic and they remain indoors. Having said that, civic administration is also ensuring that very real-time updates are given in their districts and their regions with respect to any preventive measures such as partial or complete blackout, or any preventive measures with respect to updated instructions for businesses and updated timings and updated do's and don'ts. Having said that, some regions like Barmer, Jaisalmer in Rajasthan, regions like Pathankot, Firozpur, and other parts of Punjab do have instructions coming in every few minutes, every 30 minutes to an hour with respect to any changes in timings for blackouts. But again, the bottom line is this: district administrations, in complete tandem with the Indian Armed Forces, are trying to ensure that people only have information, correct information, that they need at this point with respect to what their movement should be, for how long they should stay indoors, how long they should maintain their supplies at home. And strict adherence to these official instructions is very, very important, Saleh. That's something we've been saying on the channel, not just today, but for the past few days. With respect to the country keeping calm, I don't think anybody can put it better than General Somi already did.
Absolutely, indeed. Dharamjot, do continue to stay on with us. We'll, of course, come back to you as more details emerge in the story. And on the broadcast at the moment, we are at this moment joined by retired Major General Neeraj Bali, who is an Indian Army veteran and also a director at Gyan Chakra think tank. General Bali, thank you very much indeed, sir, for taking time out and speaking to us here on WION. I first want to ask you, what's your reading of these drones that are being spotted in certain areas over the Indian skies just 3.5 hours since the ceasefire deal was announced between India and Pakistan?
Look, irrational as it is for us to start seeing violations nearly half an hour after the press conference was held. But there can be broadly two explanations for this. One, of course, is that Pakistan is having a buyer's remorse. There is a second thought about the ceasefire, which is unlikely. So there is another explanation. Now, let's look at what had happened. 3:35, the Pakistani DGMO had called. 6 o'clock, we held a press conference. And nearly half an hour later, this whole thing started. There is quite a possibility that there is a large element within the Pakistani army, what we usually refer as a rogue element, in this case, rogue formations or rogue divisions, people who have not reconciled to the idea of the ceasefire. This is one possible explanation. Now, this would be very hard to digest within Indian Army because such a thing is unthinkable once the instructions have been passed and orders have been passed. But in Pakistani Army, this sort of behavior can be expected. Now, why I'm saying this rogue element theory is because, after all, the Pakistani Prime Minister has accepted ceasefire. He's gone on record to the media in Pakistan to praise the ceasefire, as well as Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, so as Ishaq Dar. As a matter of fact, the fact that DGMO called our DGMO means even Asim Munir was on board at that point of time. So there is definitely a larger part of hierarchy which rooted for ceasefire. But it appears that there's another element which is not accepting it. Secondly, the fact that they chose multiple targets, particularly something as serious as the core headquarters in Srinagar, gives me the impression that whoever is behind this wants to provoke India and make it look like as if we are the ones who are violating the ceasefire. This looks like to be the game. Of course, India has not fallen for it. We are defending whatever we have to defend, but we haven't crossed over. We haven't done anything at all. The third and the last point I will make, because some of what I'm saying would appear a little incredible to many listeners as to how within the army some people can do this sort of a thing. Please understand that those of us who have dealt with Pakistani army know that they have a very different mindset from what we are used to in India. That is a different culture. They do not consider themselves subservient to the government of the day, unlike in India, where we are absolutely, we understand and agree to the supremacy of the political leadership. It's crystal clear to us. There is no dispute. There is also a degree of arrogance in that army in the top hierarchy, because they have ruled the country, or at least they ruled by proxy. I want to just quickly end by giving you two examples. When Kargil happened, famously, the Prime Minister of the day, Nawaz Sharif, said that General Pervez Musharraf hadn't informed him. Here was an army chief who didn't think the political leadership needed to be informed before launching an operation or planning an operation. And similarly, if you look back at what Pakistanis did in erstwhile East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, the untold horrors they committed upon their own people tells you a degree of arrogance in that army's thinking, having ruled the country, that they really don't have to obey the instructions of the government.
Right. The rogue elements theory that you pointed out, it's possible that there could be elements within the Pakistani army who are not convinced that this ceasefire is the way to proceed. If that is indeed the case, then how does the Indian armed apparatus take this forward with the Pakistanis?
Look, at the moment, we have to wait and watch, because what we are saying, this is the theory. But I cannot see any other explanation to what they are doing. After all, leadership and everyone agreed. So what we need to do is what we have always done. We need to stay disciplined. We need to defend ourselves. We need to carry on doing exactly what we are doing in Srinagar and elsewhere. And then let's wait and watch for another day or maybe two.
Right.
And if before that there are more serious violations, we always reserve the right to strike back.
Of course, that's of course going to happen if the Pakistanis do not fall in line. Now, when dealing with Pakistan, it is important to trust but to verify. With that being the case, the fact that a ceasefire was agreed upon within 4 days since this war just heated up and blew in the faces of the Pakistanis. General Bali, how do you see this proceeding from here? Does it mean that the appetite of the Pakistanis for a confrontation with India, has that been sated because there is a realization that they can't take this militarily forward because of what has happened to them in the last 24 to 72 hours?
I've said this so many times before, and I will say it again, that there is an element of irrationality in the way Pakistani armies prosecute strategy. I do not see what the end game is once you do this. You agree to a ceasefire, then you break it after half an hour, and you start all over again. So, as far as we are concerned, you as you correctly said, trust but verify. Indeed, we must verify several times over before we begin to trust. Please remember that 2 days from today, the DGMOs are supposed to speak at 12 o'clock on the 12th. So things will become clearer unless there are far bigger violations, that happen by the time.
Right.
The last point I'll make is, unlike established army structures like India or other countries, there are so many wheels within wheels in the Pakistani structure that you don't really know who to deal with at any point of time. Let me remind you, who did Secretary of State Marco Rubio call up 2 days ago? He called up the army chief.
Absolutely.
Which is not really the hierarchy or the protocol. So you really don't know who's calling the shots at any given time, period of time. But I think we are capable of defending ourselves. We are capable of taking the fight to the other side. So there's nothing to worry. Nobody has to panic.
Absolutely.
It is just business as usual with Pakistan. let's wait and see.
This, of course, is business as usual. The fact that even we are seeing these drones over the Indian airspace in the aftermath of the ceasefire that has been agreed upon, one can, of course, say that this is business as usual when dealing with Pakistan. But for the general public who'd be interested in knowing, the fact that this ceasefire agreement came into place after there was a call from the Pakistani DGMO to his Indian counterpart, where it was agreed upon that a ceasefire will be adhered to from 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Will the DGMOs again speak to verify that the ceasefire is being adhered to? What is the procedure that the Indian Army will, of course, take forward?
Well, there is a hotline, and the DGMOs can speak at any point of time. I would have expected that if the violations, which would have come to the notice of Pakistani Army also, let's assume for a minute that the rogue element theory is correct. The DGMO should have picked up a phone and called our DGMO and told him that there is a little problem which internally will be sorted out, and India needn't retaliate or India needn't take any action. But that really hasn't happened so far. So we have to wait and watch. Like I said, stay disciplined, stay restrained the way we have been and measured. And of course, we always have the right to take further action if things get out of hands.
It's interesting that you mentioned that there is this hotline where the DGMOs can just pick up the phone and talk to their counterparts. The fact that we haven't got a call from the Pakistanis, because the Pakistanis would be aware of what is happening over the Indian airspace, how the Indian military apparatus be looking at this?
Look, so like we said, we are waiting and watching, and let's see what happens. Because if this is a divide within the Pakistani army, which is manifesting itself in this action, then I'm afraid we are looking at a very major action within Pakistan in the next 24 to 48 hours. Pakistan is not a stranger to coups, for example, not a stranger to all kinds of upheavals between the political leadership and the military leadership. So if there is a division which is leading to this, interestingly, I looked at 3 Pakistani newspapers just before we came on air. None of them is mentioning any action on the line of control.
Absolutely.
So there is obviously some hesitation there. Otherwise, if they were to blame us, they would be the first ones to say that we have violated the line of control. Neither the Dawn, nor the Pakistan Tribune, nor the Daily Times, none of them is mentioning a single word about this violation.
If one is cynical, if one were to be cynical, General Bali, the Pakistani newspapers would, of course, jump in case there is a retaliation for what we are witnessing over the Indian airspace. So, if one were to be cynical, that is when you would expect the Pakistani media to jump up and lap over the story.
I agree. We should be cynical when it comes to Pakistani media. We've had our first-hand experience. But in this particular case, let's assume for a minute that the Pakistanis have violated the line of control to provoke us and to carry on the fight. It makes sense that if this was official, if it had the official sanction, then Pakistani media would already be highlighting it, that there is problem on the line of control, there is something going on, skirmishes have started, they would probably blame India. But the fact there's not a single word in anything in Pakistani media. So I think maybe they are themselves pretty nonplussed at the highest level. I mean, that's what I'm just thinking. I obviously have no evidence to say what I'm saying, other than thinking about Pakistani the way we have thought about them all these years.
All right, interesting. General Bali, do continue to stay on with us because we'll be talking more in terms of what is unfolding at this moment. But in the interim, my colleague Idris Loan is, of course, joining us from Srinagar. Idris has been tracking the developments for us tirelessly ever since this conflict had broken out. He'd also been getting us the ground reports of what the situation had been in Srinagar and in other areas since the ceasefire had, of course, come into existence. Idris, this is a very important and a crucial moment in terms of how the people are looking and reacting to what is unfolding there. Give us a sense of what is happening at this moment in Srinagar, because the authorities say that everything at this moment is under control.
Well, yes, Saleh, if we talk about Srinagar city right now, the electricity has been restored. That is relief for the people all across the city. But the last 2 hours have been full of panic. There were blasts that were heard by the people. There was a lot of, the sky was basically red. There was a lot of noise. as well, and that is when the panic was created all across the Srinagar city. There was no confirmation from the security forces or authorities at that point of time that what exactly has happened. People, when later in the afternoon, when people heard about the ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan, there was a lot of cheer after that, and a lot of people started coming out of their houses, and especially in Srinagar city, we saw a lot of people coming out on the roads. The shops started opening, the vendors started coming out as well, and we did see men, women, children back on the street. There was traffic back on the roads as well. But the moment it was dark, the sunset, we started hearing those blasts. There were multiple blasts in Srinagar that we heard all through the evening for at least 25 to 30 minutes. And that is when the panic was created. At that point of time, people just went back into their houses, took shelter. There was a complete blackout. Electricity just came in like 5 minutes ago, and hoping that it stays like this now. There are no sounds that we are hearing at the moment. There's no movement in the sky as well. Hopefully things are back to normal, but people still, as a precaution, keeping the blackout, staying inside, no movement outside. Although security forces outside guarding every route, every road, we're seeing Jammu and Kashmir police, paramilitary forces on the roads. While as the same reports were coming in from the northern part of Kashmir in Baramulla, same reports from Avantipora, and we did hear the same thing happening in Jammu as well. But at the moment, I think within some time, the Indian security forces, especially the Indian Army, might come out with a release saying what exactly was happening, because nobody has a clue. Even the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir tweeted, and he was taken by surprise as well. He was like, this is not ceasefire violation, it's in Srinagar.
Because, Omar Abdullah, a little while back when he posted that very cryptic tweet, explosions heard across Srinagar, what is happening? Do we know as to what was the cause of those explosions, or is this still something that is currently under investigation, where the security agencies will look at as to what was the cause of those explosions that Omar Abdullah was talking about?
Well, at the moment, no word from the Indian Armed Forces. We did hear from the top officials of Jammu and Kashmir Police that there were drone sightings that came from across the border. But after that, there has been complete silence from the authorities. They've not really verified or confirmed to us what exactly was happening. But it was all over the sky. There are so many videos all over, from Udhampur, from Jammu, from Srinagar, from Baramulla, everywhere. It was exactly the same last 2 days, Saleh, that we witnessed in Srinagar, in Jammu. It was exactly the same pattern, but at least at that point of time, security forces as well as authorities had given out advisories and also asked people to go inside and take shelter. But today there was no confirmation or verification that was done, that came from any of the armed forces. We're still waiting for a proper clarification what exactly was happening across the Union territory. Right. And let's see when they come out with that release.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you very much, Idris Loan, for joining us and getting us all those details. We'll, of course, come back to you as more information comes through on the story. But on the broadcast, we still have with us General Neeraj Bali. General Bali, the fact that there is now a ceasefire, and although there are these drones that have been spotted, there are these explosions that have been heard, one expects that, the things will, of course, continue to adhere according to what was agreed upon in the ceasefire.